silence, or silence conveys the meaning. I think it was something around that I'd written. Of course, talking about silence is challenging. So, and it is always tempting particularly after 30 minutes of sitting, to just really, there's nothing that needs to be said. It feels a little extra to talk about things, or at least talk about the Dharma, when it's so apparent in silence and stillness. And I'm sure we all notice that qualitative shift where when we sit for a period of time, 30 minutes is a good period of time, then very naturally there is a quietening, and there's also an aliveness that becomes much more apparent. And that's realization in itself. We oughtn't to think that realization or enlightenment, awakening, these terms can sound quite exotic and create distance from what might feel like a mundane or everyday experience. We find ourselves reaching for a deeper or a clearer, more meaningful experience. It's a mistake to reach ahead or to look for something outside of this direct present experience now. And it is the discipline and the over and over and over and over again-ness of meditation and Zazen in a Zen school that really brings awakening, presence into our being. That's what it doesn't bring, it is our being. But it's noticing and seeing this original nature of self that is always quiet and still, whether words are being spoken or not. The founder of Zen Buddhism is attributed to be as Bodhidharma the first ancestor in China who had come from India, semi-legendary figure. We don't know a lot of details, but the personage of Bodhidharma carries with it a lot of the particular qualities of Zen, or what would become of Chan in China. And there are 4 lines of text which define Zen that are recorded as having come from Bodhidharma. And these are, so Zen is a special transmission outside the scriptures. No dependency on words and letters, pointing directly to the human mind, seeing into one's nature and attaining Buddhahood. I was looking up this translation a little earlier, and I found it in a short piece which was written by a modern Zen teacher, Norman Fischer, who was describing some of the qualities of Zen. It's really quite good. I thought I'd share that here. He said, Zen Buddhism is a stripped down, determined, uncompromising, cut to the chase, meditation-based Buddhism that takes no interest in doctrinal refinements. Not relying on scripture, doctrine, or ritual, Zen is verified by personal experience and is passed on from teacher to disciple, hand to hand, ineffably through hard, intimate training. Though Zen recognizes, at least loosely, the validity of normative Buddhist scripture, it has created its own texts over the generations. Liberally flavored with doses of Taoism, Confucianism, and Chinese poetry, and written in informal language studied with Chinese folk sayings, much of classical Zen literature is built on the legendary anecdotes of great masters. The Buddha is rarely mentioned. And then he says, these 4 Zen lines are ascribed to the founder Bodhidharma and quoted to illustrate the essential Zen spirit. Yeah, so that's very good, in my opinion. And certainly to point out this blend of Buddhism with Taoism and Confucianism. And to also point out that the Buddha is rarely mentioned in Zen texts. Of course, at Long Beach Meditation we have different teachers from different trainings, different backgrounds, with more of an emphasis. Some have more of an emphasis in the sutras, in the teachings, in Theravadan teachings, in teachings of Vipassana. Zen relies less on direct teachings of the Buddha. It certainly doesn't disparage or pretend to be in any way superior, but it grew out of a strict emphasis upon meditation as the means to realization of the full potentiality of a human being to be awake and aware, which is what the word Buddha means, right? To be an awakened one. Right? For us here, we are, of course, putting this awakening practice into being, into action, from when we come in and we sit. It's a strange word, awakening. Doesn't quite reach it. It's, it seems to denote waking up from something not real to something more real, or from the deluded world to the enlightened world. But that is really quite a blunt generalization. We are certainly, as human beings, if we look at this word delusion, to say that we live in a deluded way. Right? But if that word deluded, or to dilute, or to split light, has a dualistic function, has a dualistic quality, and that's as human beings, that's how we're navigating the world in a dualistic way. Like when I turned on the 91 on the way down here, the options were to go west or east. So dualism was useful, in that context. Head west, young man, right? So we use it to navigate very skillfully. And yet when it comes to examining and understanding this mystery of life, the mystery of being, dualistic understanding is unsatisfactory, cannot answer, cannot comprehend the fullness or certainly the meaning of reality. This is how Bodhidharma says here, no dependency on words and letters, a special transmission outside the scriptures. Sometimes translated as an intimate teaching, or a special transmission outside the scriptures. So rather than having somebody write down how it is, and then take that on, and then follow that, now that is not a valid approach. Many people in the world for many generations have led useful and fulfilling lives by following scriptures and words and letters. Right? But Chan in Zen, for much of the populace who studied, were not lettered people. Many illiterate people. Right? So the area of philosophy, of trying to work things out intellectually, wasn't a good fit. So it's not to disparage words and letters. After all, I'm using words and letters here. But words and letters are always a pointer. They're always pointing at the immediacy of our present experience. What Bodhidharma called a special transmission. We are being transmitted to, and we are also transmitting. It functions in both directions at once. We experience that in our sitting practice. For many people learning meditation or coming to meditation, a lot of the initial work is in how to sit with a busy mind. Or you may hear that and think like, well, I've been at this for some years and I'm still working with sitting with a busy mind. Because as human beings, our minds are busy thinking about all kinds of things, projecting and looking back, looking forward, weighing, picking and choosing. Pretty much always engaged in that. But then when we come to our sitting practice, it's time for us to sit together. It's not a matter of turning that off. Right? There are words and letters being spoken between the ears by the sense of me, I. Is using words and letters and talking about things, talking to ourselves, right? Spinning a yarn, making a commentary. For myself, I was sitting here, I was suddenly just very tired. It's a little warm, right? Or I felt myself being sleepy and then just starting to fall into dreams. Then wake up, then I remember, no, I'm here. I'm sitting right here at Long Beach meditation. But you could just falling into that more dreamlike realm. And as we're sitting, our brains, they don't have to be involved, thankfully, in planning or in keeping us safe or having to make decisions. But like a hammer that everything looks like a nail to, it continues to spin the wheels and say, okay, if there's nothing important to do right now, give me a minute, I'll think of something. Right? I'll think of something to fill that space. And quite naturally, because our identity of me, I, is so thoroughly, impulsively entangled with the thought stream, then it's very easy to just slip into that. And then to fall into thought and pondering, and then to, forget then what it is that we're here for, to forget the art of meditation, and instead to just fall into thinking about things. We all do that, but this is why we have the introduction of method. This is why we talk about breathing and awareness practice. In order to open the aperture again, or to reclaim bandwidth in the senses and in the environment, to help prevent just falling into this thought stream. But with the issue is not the thinking in itself, with the words and the letters or whatever is being formed in the mind. It's really no problem whether the way it's thinking is occurring or not occurring, whether it's busy or quiet. What is the real shift of the issue is if we cling or attach to that thinking, call it mine, assign value and purpose to it, and then throw fuel on the fire and begin to add to that content. And it's also a mistake to say this thinking that occurring is bad, like I'm not doing it right, or this isn't it, and to try and push it away or push it down. That's making a mistake in the opposite direction. Right? The art of Zen sitting is to allow what is here to be here. And I really mean that in terms of allow, like not to call anything at all good or bad. It's the apportioning positive, negative value to phenomena that causes difficulty in meditation. If we surrender that value system, which there's no switch to do that. Okay, I'm just going to surrender my value system and sit in this unbiased, preferenceless, wonderful way, right? A human being can't do that. We can't do that because that's what we do. That's part of being who and what we are. But when we come in to sit, we're encouraged here by the image of Shakyamuni Buddha behind us, who's sitting thus, who is just a human personage, a human person. But here he's depicted as something a little different, which is as a Buddha. Right? So when we're sitting and we have all of this content going on, I like to look at it as, okay, I shouldn't be driving now, right? I'm intoxicated with my preferences and my delusions and the story of my life. I'm not fit to drive this thing for 30 minutes, so I'm going to take the keys and I'm going to hand them to the Buddha, or to God, or to presence, or whatever word or no word, but whatever you want to put in that space, right? But it's handing it in. That's for surrender. It's like, I don't need to drive, and it's also a relief and a refuge. But I don't need to drive this thing. It turns out that this thing is driving itself. But this has really nothing to do with me. But I'm not living this or experiencing this. Right? That's one way to look at it. Like Dogen talks about this, where he says, to carry the self forward and experience things is delusion. You could say is dualistic. To carry the self, me, I, forward and experience things is upside down view, or is dualistic, or is deluded. The things come forward, the 10,000 things come forward and experience self is awakening or enlightenment. That's the great difference and the great subtle shift and art of Zazen. That to surrender the self agenda, right? Again, there's no switch for that. This is a practice. You have to practice this shift in order to see and to genuinely realize that rather than I am experiencing this, rather the world is experiencing itself as this. It's like relinquishing the authority there, even for a short period of time. But the loss of self, of clinging to self, is ironically and wonderfully liberating. How it's ironic that forgetting the self or losing the self is a liberating experience. A liberating conscious experience. And yet every night we experience it when we go to sleep and fall into the, warm embrace of oblivion for a few hours. And you know a time when you've had a really good sleep, and you wake up and you're like, oh, that was great. What was great? You disappeared for several hours. How wonderful. But it really is the taking the load off. Because to live as a human being, particularly in this what feels like an increasingly chaotic, difficult and violent world, is burdensome. To carry the self forward is difficult. And so we seek refuge and we seek relief. And meditation is that. It is refuge and relief. Amount of time, again, it's no small thing to be able to gather together even in peaceful, close proximity. To have just a shared trust in the person next to you, where you can just really let your guard down and just be completely thus. And allow all things to be thus, without distinction, to dissolve the distinctions that we make, so that the whole world is that peaceful dwelling, is that liberated presence. It includes all things. This one that's sitting thinking, this one over here, the sound of the dog in the alleyway, the sound of the cars on the street, the sound of the door as someone enters. Why not make a radical shift and welcome it all as it is. Even the difficult thoughts or the feelings. You know, if we can't welcome, at least allow that. Pointing directly to the human mind, seeing into one's nature, and attaining Buddhahood. So what Bodhidharma talked about here, or assures everyone, is this is for everyone. There's no prior training required. There's no course that needs to be taken. That's the wonderful steep path of Zen, too. You know, of this immediate, what was called spontaneous awakening, or immediate realization. No prior training required, right? In fact, having the thinnest CV possible is an advantage, right? It's like, I don't know what I'm doing is perfect preparation. Right? Because if we know what we're doing, or we think we know what we're doing, then there's going to be some undoing of that. That has to be worn out, or that has to be lost. You know, so really knowing nothing and having no real agenda beyond awareing this experience, then we find ourselves perfectly equipped. But equipped for what? It's not about trying to reach for Buddha's enlightenment, or some picture in the mind's eye of how it will be when we've sat enough. What will the reward be? Right? But rather to see, you know, the radical acceptance of this now is the reward. This precious experience of life. Dogen in another place says, the reward is one's wholehearted practice. And I would read that line. It's a line that comes up in the session precautions, and it's just, that's such a, you know, sounds like such throwaway poetics or something. You know, hold on, the reward will be my wholehearted practice. That doesn't sound, I'm not, you know, it doesn't sound so compelling. But if we really look at that, the reward is to live wholeheartedly. What a wonderful actual reward that is, to be wholeheartedly, to have the wholeness of heart, to be alive and engaged now, always now. So that's wholehearted practice, and that practice is for practice realization, which reaches through all activities, ultimately all activities of day and night. The sitting of a coming to meditation is a very important foundation practice and great discipline. It's, for many times I've seen, in my experience of teaching at Jokai, for those who see in one-on-one interview, people will go do retreats, and then they go back to their lives, and they're busy, they're working, they've got family, they're doing what they do. And you see somebody, and maybe they come back a year later, which is always a funny thing. It's like living in a strange time capsule at a Zen temple, because it's like, you see somebody and they might have been there, were you here a month ago, or a year ago, or 5 years ago? It's just like, there's no reference for it, you know? But people will come, and then in talking with people, often, you know, if somebody is someone who has maintained a home practice, whether they've shown up to a group or not, but they've given a certain amount of time each day to still sitting, the quality of their present aliveness, eye to eye, is clear as day. You just see this is somebody who's awake, who is awakened. Again, don't compare that awakening to the picture of what a Buddha looks like when awakened. But just trust your own awakened heart and own awakened spirit, and live your life awake. You see that in someone who lives that way. You are what you practice. And sometimes you see others who, hey, well, yeah, I did the session and and then I got to be honest, I haven't sat at all, and that's what we do as human beings, because human beings don't like to sit. It's the activity of Buddhas. Sitting is the activity of Buddhas, so we give time to that activity. For this period of time, for 30 minutes at least, you arrange the body and sit as a flesh and bone Buddha, sitting in front of the wooden varnish Buddha. So a whole of Zen, in that sense, can be condensed into these 4 lines that were attributed to Bodhidharma. And Norman Fischer added here, this shoot from the hip Zen spirit appeals to the American mind, which is as iconoclastic and anti-authoritarian as it is religious. That's an interesting way to put it, you know. And I'm coming from another country, but I'm also, you know, American. I did gratefully became a citizen too, but it's interesting that he can talk about the particular of the American mind, iconoclastic, anti-authoritarian, but also religious. So I feel like Zen does speak to the American mind. And I was talking with one of the other Long Beach teachers this week about how in our practice together over these past 6 or 7 years that we talk to get together, there's something of a family style starting to come through, it feels, with the Sangha or with Long Beach. You know, where you can recognize a similar verbiage or a similar way, are very different in different people, but there's something there which is a uniquely Long Beach meditation expression. You know, and everyone here is a real living part of that. You know, you see like the core of the people who've been practicing a long time, always augmented by new people and returning people. And it's a profound offering that we make. Quite simple, a nice room, a safe space to come and sit and look deeply into the original nature of self. Pointing it directly at the mind, realizing Buddha. Everyone here is involved in that practice. And there's no barrier or limit to the depth of your realization of those words, and even to go beyond those words.